This is Unit 10, Muscle. This video will include Part A, Types and Development, and Part B, Structure of Skeletal Muscle. Unit 10, Muscle, consists of two videos. As we mentioned, Part A and B are in the first video, and the second video includes Part C, How do skeletal muscles work, and Part D, Smooth muscle. Let's look first at the types and development. Remember, the body is composed of two parts. The somatic part, the so-called outer tube, consisting of voluntary organs, essentially skeletal muscle. This is found in the body wall, the limbs, and the head. And then there's the visceral part, the so-called inner tube. It includes the involuntary organs. They contain smooth muscle, such as the internal organs in the abdomen and the thorax, but also including organs in the somatic part of the body. Such organs contain smooth muscle, including blood vessels found throughout the body, sweat glands, and the erector pili muscles of the skin, glands. So you see, the visceral component is more than just the so-called inner tube. We'll have more to say about this when the nervous system is covered. Three types of muscle exist: skeletal muscle, smooth muscle, and cardiac muscle. We've mentioned this already. The skeletal muscle has certain characteristics. For example, they're controlled by voluntary action. They contain striations, that is, visible stripes, visible under a microscope. The fibers are parallel in shape, and they're located in the somatic part of the body. In addition to that, they have a single neural innervation. This will make more sense when we get to the nervous system. They comprise 40 to 50% of the body weight. With the skeleton, they comprise the musculoskeletal system. Smooth muscle has its own characteristics. It's involuntary. Striations are absent, hence the name smooth. Fibers are spindle-shaped, pointed at both ends. They are located in a visceral part of the body, and they have a double innervation. ANS stands for the autonomic nervous system. We'll get to that also later. Cardiac muscle has its own characteristics. Cardiac muscle is involuntary. Striations, however, are present. Fibers are interconnected. It's a visceral location, and it has a dual innervation. Muscles can only do one thing, and that is to shorten or pull their ends closer together. They don't push. They often work in antagonistic pairs, especially the skeletal muscles. Functionally, a muscle may act as a prime mover, the muscle primarily responsible for a movement. For example, if you're lifting an object, you contract your biceps brachii muscle. The antagonist is a muscle that opposes the prime mover. For example, your triceps brachii muscle. A synergist is a muscle that steadies a joint. You might use both of these to steady the joint while you're holding an object motionless. A fixator is a muscle that immobilizes a joint. If you hold an object very tightly and steady, the muscles may be acting as fixators. The characteristics of muscles include excitability, that is, they respond to a stimulus. Contractility, they have the ability to shorten. Extensibility, they can be stretched. Take, for example, modeling clay. Roll it into a long cylinder and stretch it out. It's easy to stretch. And then there's elasticity. The modeling clay is not a model for that, but a rubber band is. You stretch the rubber band and when you let go, it recoils. Let's look at the structure of skeletal muscles. We'll look at the gross anatomy of a muscle, and then we'll look at the microscopic anatomy of a muscle. Let's look at some terms related to muscle. Myo, which means muscle, is commonly used as a prefix, as is sarcos, which means literally flesh, but it refers to a muscle. Muscle anatomy can be understood in terms of largest to smallest structure, shown in the diagram. Take the whole muscle, for example. It's divided into visible threads called fascicles. Now, these are the fibers that you think of when you see a cut of roast beef or white meat of chicken. Fascicles are bundles of fibers. The fibers are the individual cells, and the fibers are composed of fibrils. A fibril, or properly called a myofibril, contains the sarcomeres, but we'll get to this in a moment. The sarcomere is composed of filament. Filaments, also called myofilaments, are bundles of protein. The muscle is well protected by tough connective tissue. It has three connective tissue coverings: the epimysium, the perimysium, and the endomysium. They cover, respectively, the muscle, the fascicle, and the fiber. All three are continuous with the tendons that attach the muscle to bone. The epimysium covers the entire muscle. It tends to blend into the deep fascia, internal connective tissue. Fibers are the cells of muscle. They're composed of fibrils or myofibrils, and they contain the usual cell organelle, plasma membrane. In muscles, we call it the sarcolemma, but I prefer to use terms we've already covered. Cytoplasm or sarcoplasm, mitochondria to generate energy, T-tubules to send signals to the interior of the muscle cell, lateral sacs, also called terminal cisternae. This is a type of smooth ER. They store calcium, and so they have a high calcium concentration. Fibers contain three groups of proteins, mostly arranged in bundles called fibrils. One type are the contractile proteins, actin and myosin. Then there are regulatory proteins, tropomyosin and troponin. And then there are the structural proteins, elastic elements made of chitin. This is a muscle fiber, a protein that extends through the middle of the bundle of myosin. Dystrophin to link actin to the cell plasma membrane and to the endomysium. It links contractile elements to the surrounding connective tissue. Fibrils are composed of bundles of protein filaments. Bundles contain alternating light and dark bands. The A band includes a light H zone in the middle and two dark bands. The I band includes one light band that's divided by a Z line or Z disc. The striations in skeletal and cardiac muscle result from the alignment of the bands in bundles of fibrils. What about the filaments? Filaments are bundles of proteins. There are thick filaments. They're composed of myosin. Myosin is shaped roughly like a golf club. It contains cross bridges, or the head of the myosin. It contains ATP binding sites. It contains an actin binding site and a hinge. Several hundred myosin molecules are arranged with the cross bridges toward the end of the thick filament. Thin filaments, on the other hand, are composed of actin. Actin takes two forms, either a globular form or a fibrous form. The diagram shows the fibrous form. The actin contains a myosin binding site. In addition to that, the thin filament contains troponin. It's a regulatory protein. It contains a calcium binding site, and it functions as a hinge. And then there's tropomyosin, a regulatory protein. This acts as a cover. Thick and thin filaments are arranged in units called sarcomeres. These are the contractile units of a muscle. Sarcomeres are separated by Z lines. The ends of the thick filaments overlap with the ends of the thin filaments. In the fibril, the dark bands result from the overlap of thick and thin filaments. Where the thick or thin filaments do not overlap, a light band results. And this is the end of the first video under Unit 10, Muscles. You're now ready to progress to parts C and D.